that's why it's really important to have a plan. Have a plan and understand what your goals are.
In fact, my camel out there is suffering right now with a broken back.
So I actually found Pepe when it was only a couple of hours old, and I'm like, oh, this is a funny meme.
Oh my god.
Yo! Who is this degen?
The old man is swing trading over years at a time. And it's like, that's where the real money is made.
The answer is a permanent loss. With single-sided staking, you don't have to worry about a permanent loss.
But really, at the end of the day, it's just the matter of a macro market. It's just what happens.
If you're aware, if you're disciplined, you can hone that into further financial growth.
Financial freedom, so we can actually live life and not have to be constantly living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, more or less, right?
Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and D-gentlemen of all ages. Welcome back and happy Friday. We are back with a book club here at the Degen Roundtable. My name is Zenith. I'm a bit of a government and legal analyst around these parts, and I'm joined by my excellent partner in crime, Mr. Will Stevenson. How you doing, buddy? He might be frozen. The man is on the road. He's on a mission. I believe he's driving to Missouri, actually, so Godspeed, sir. All right, now you're back. Can't hear you, though. And that's how she rolls, folks. Alrighty. Well, we'll get Will back in here in just a second, but I do want to say hello to all of you. Tonight, we are talking about America's Bank, aka a defense of the Federal Reserve, or more accurately, this is actually a great story around the creation of it. I know that one of the things we love to do around these parts is kind of rail against the Federal Reserve and the modern day idea of it. But what this story does is it really gives you context about what was going on back in the day when the Federal Reserve was originally proposed and then actually put into action. There were a handful of issues that were some carryovers back when the country was created, but overall, it seems like this story, I would argue, does a very good job of giving an accurate description of the challenges of the time and what the solution was. I know it's very easy to sit up here on our high horse in the year of our Lord 2025 and say, those fools, they knew nothing, they screwed it up, but it's not always that simple. So we're going to do our best to extend them some grace because this is our devil's advocate arc. We're going to try to make the arguments for things that we disagree with so we can better understand them. And then we're going to spend the last bit of the show, trying to take them down a peg or two with our arguments, which we do believe happen to be better. But outside of that, my co-host is back. Will, how you doing, man?
I'm back, baby, and better than ever. And I don't know if I think my audio is coming through my headset. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
All right, sweet. So there might be a little bit of a delay, but I'm okay with that. I'm doing great. I just finished job site up here in Lincoln, Kansas. I don't know, central Kansas area. And I'm headed back to Dallas. So going back to Texas for a little bit. So for those of you guys in Dallas, fucking love to say hi to you for like a day or two before I got to bounce back up to Kansas again and start working again on Tuesday. So it's good. Nice to meet you. What am I in the middle of a thought when I came back here?
No, I was just about at the end of my thought saying that the book does a very good historical representation of the arguments of the time. If anything, I would classify this book as like a historical political drama about it's actually the process of creating the Federal Reserve. So they talk about all the key players going on, all the different arguments of people pro or against, or they want centralized or decentralized or public or private control. And I think it does a very good job exploring pretty much the entire argument surrounding it and then talking about who was involved and what did they want, what were they doing, what happened in the past, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was a good one. 8 hours on Audible. So not too shabby, I will say. It was a pretty decent read. Yeah. So Will, what are you doing, by the way? So you're driving out of Kansas? Where are you going?
Yeah, so I'm headed towards Dallas. I just finished with the we're on a tower knocking over spree right now. We found an employer who's just giving us all these tiny little contracts. Go over here, drop a tower, chop it up, throw it in a dumpster. Go over here, drop a tower, chop it up, throw it in a dumpster. And we're on this little campaign hopping or island hopping campaign sort of deal. It's really cool. So I've never dropped so many towers in my life. It's fucking awesome. It's the best part of this job. I just get and then kind of put it
You're
in
breaking
again.
up on us a little
So
bit.
we had finished doing the tower over here. Ah, fiddlesticks. Well,
Yeah, you're
I'm
back
about
now.
to hop on the interstate, so hopefully, yeah, I'm getting onto the interstate off of like this little tiny dirt road. So hopefully the signal will be better. Normally the driving signal is pretty good while I'm on the interstate. That's something I've noticed. So here's
That's
hoping
true.
that it stays that way. But yeah, that's what's up with me. What's up with you?
I am just doing what I do. I actually had a decently fun week. I got two things I did want to mention before we get into it. I saw the Chainsaw Man movie in theaters on the last day it was showing, and I gotta say, it was really good.
Hell
Are you
yeah.
familiar with Chainsaw Man?
I know it's a dude who's got a chainsaw for a face, but I know nothing other than that.
Yeah, it's kind of like a world where there are devils that have like powers that are based on like human fears, and the more that humans fear something, the more powerful the devil is. He's a weird hybrid thing where he made friends with the devil, it died, it gave him his heart, so now he has the Chainsaw Man powers. But this one was, this one was really good. This is a good movie. And it's not like all the other like anime movies where they're like fun for the fans, but objectively as like standalone movies, they're not good. This one, fantastic. The pacing actually like understood that it was a movie. So like the first half of it, you're just doing like character exploration, learning about these people, and then like seeing how they interact and stuff. And then the last hour is just like nonstop go, 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 crazy action. And it's all just absolutely beautiful too. Oh my gosh, it's so good.
So know nothing about anything in this film. I can watch and have a good time.
Yeah, you probably could. Realistically, if you just wanted to get introduced to like literally like the four main characters that you need to know, if you just go watch like the first 2.5 episodes of Chainsaw Man, like you're caught up. So there you go. 45 minutes of what I would argue is a pretty darn good show as well, so it works. But yeah, I'm excited. I hope we see more of these. It made I think it made like over $100 million at the box office, was like the #1 movie in theaters for a few weeks there as well. So I know Hollywood is slightly seething after this movie that had a $5 million budget just beat all of them. It's like, suck it.
That's awesome. Hell yeah. I will say,
Yeah.
I think that anime is becoming like a more socially acceptable thing. Like I don't know if it was always that way or if I'm just getting older and noticing more, but I will say that like there's a lot more people, because it used to have this like stigma to it. It's like, oh shit, you're a fucking weeb, you're a loser, blah da da da. But now it's like, God, no, it's cool to like anime now. Maybe my friend circle has just got cooler. So
No, I think you're
don't.
spot on. I think you're entirely correct, which is that especially over COVID, it got pretty popular because a lot of it got put on streaming platforms, and it also just got a lot easier to access. And then people were like, oh shoot, this stuff's actually pretty good. And then I would also argue it's a little bit of a Hollywood betraying the audiences, and then they look for greener pastures elsewhere. And then the fine shores of Japan are like, welcome, we have cool stuff. And everyone's like,
Yeah,
you do.
Bro, that's spot on. Hollywood has been like betraying the preferences of its audience. It's like, hey, you know what you need? More you go girl stories and more like garbage DEI crap and like let me just spoon feed you. You used to be able to get away with like a teaspoon of preaching if you had like a gallon of content, and it seems like the ratio's reversed. And they made like a teaspoon of content and tried like dumping a gallon's worth of preaching and bullshit into it. It's like, hey, accept this message, blah blah blah, jam it down your throat. And it's just like people have been rejecting all of this, most of the stuff that Hollywood's been turning out over the last like 7 to 10 years. At least that's my sentiment. So I totally agree. I think that Japan's got the storytelling. If you like the animation style, or if all that aside, like their ability to tell good stories is pretty damn good. So
Yeah.
a lot of respect to the anime folks out there.
Absolutely. And I will say, for the Chainsaw Man movie, especially, the animation is fantastic, and they really lean into trying to give you like that visual spectacle that you're like not going to get outside of like CGI. It's they get a little artsy in some areas, but it's like the good kind. You're like, oh wow, this just works. And also the music absolutely slaps. The opening for it is like this electro swing kind of feel song, and it goes hard.
Okay. kick ass.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
caravan polish type stuff.
Yeah, pretty much actually. Yeah. Alrighty, tell you what though.
Hell yeah.
I think it's about time to stop the rambling. I had to get that off my chest because I feel like I hop on here a lot, and you're always doing cool things. You ask me what I'm up to, and I say I'm working and playing golf and doing this stuff, and it's like, well, I have something else to report, and I'm very happy about it. So,
Bro, it's all you got to do is learn how to tell interesting stories to otherwise seem benign. You know, it's
that's true.
that's a thing that you can learn how to do is find something fun and fancy throughout the day and just kind of take some creative liberties to it.
I dig it. I dig it. Alrighty, tell you what though, let's say hello to everybody out there in our audience because we got some good folks in the chat tonight. There you
It's
go.
time
Thank you, Will.
for chat shoutouts.
You're a little blurry, so I'm just seeing a white square, but I think everybody knows what that is at this point.
They better.
True. All right, first DJ of the evening, and a classic, if you will, Funkmaster Hex. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening with the raise of the whiskey glass. Cheers to you, sir. Will is driving, but I got a beer for you, so salute. Up next, good buddy of ours with the cheers toasting with the beers, Josh, Slide 180. Good to see you, brother. And then we got a longtime friend of ours as well, Mr. Hexkin Lost in Asia. He says, we do it live, lol. Where'd you go, Will?
Going all
And
over
then
the place.
Yes. And then Hexkin is actually jumping to the second half of the show. He has a very good argument against the Federal Reserve right here. He says, the Fed is a failure. However, it is safe because of the power of our U.S. military protecting the U.S. dollar. Well said, sir. It's definitely something to be said, which is that we live in that unipolar world and the U.S. is able to project force globally almost instantaneously, keeps trade open, and keeps that U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency. And without that, I don't know if any of this would have really worked that well past like World War II, because outside of that, things would have gotten pretty hairy. Or if anything, we would see more call for centralized banking stuff after World War II when there's more of a demand for U.S. product and stuff. But don't you worry, we'll be getting to that at the end of it. But first, we do have to prop the guy up a little bit. Alrighty, so folks, I already kind of gave you the synopsis, but yeah. Federal Reserve was created back in 1913. The proposals started around 1870, and people were pointing out to the fact that, well, our current banking system kind of sucks because the Constitution said that the federal government has the power to mint money, but there was a lot of distrust at the time, so they didn't really let them print paper money, but they could do coins. As a result of that, it's kind of hard to do big business with just a giant stack of coins, because then we go back to the gold argument of, well, how do I carry 1,000 gold bars safely across the country from one person to another? That kind of stuff. So they were like, well, why don't we do what the rest of the world is doing? The UK, France, they have centralized banks that allowed them to have more flexibility with the amount of money in circulation. So during times of high demand, they can actually, keep money flowing very regularly. And then during times of low demand, they can rein it back a little bit and keep it somewhat level. But as I mentioned, with the skepticism of the American populace at the time, which I can definitely get behind, which is they don't even want the federal government to print paper money. So why would they want them to have a centralized bank? Well, a group of guys got together at a place called Jekyll Island. We may have talked about that previously in a different book club with Johnny Chaos. And there they came up with the idea for the Federal Reserve. And they kind of struck this beautiful balance, or less beautiful, more of a negotiated balance, if you will, between privatization and being somewhat publicized, which is that, yes, it does kind of answer to the government, and it's decentralized in the fact that they have 12 different regional banks around the country to be backstops against the rest of the banking system overall. Eventually, this whole thing culminates with Woodrow Wilson, as the president at the time, signing into the legislation the creation of the Federal Reserve, and they have a good little run there, and then we start seeing cracks in the armor. But the point of the show tonight is we want to understand why people were in favor of the Federal Reserve, what the arguments for it are, try to make it as best as we possibly can, and then after that, we're going to take it up with them. So, tell you what, I'm going to start us off with a little pop quiz here for our very own Mr. Will Stevenson. Good sir, do you remember what any of the issues around the economy under the Articles of Confederation were?
Bro, that is such a specific question. I do not know.
All right, well, I'll tell you. So during this time, this is right after the Revolutionary War. So we didn't have the Constitution yet, but we had the Articles of Confederacy. The main issues from the economic side was, one, all the states were kind of treated as their own sovereigns. So the U.S. couldn't like bargain internationally as a cohesive unit. It was like the state of Virginia, the state of Delaware, the state of New York having to like sign individual treaties with other countries in order to like avoid tariffs and stuff. Additionally, there was no single currency, meaning that each state had their own currency. And that's like trying to go to the mall, but every store takes a different like meme coin effectively. And you got to figure out all the exchange rates, figure out what's
There's
valuable
arbitrage
right now.
opportunities.
Oh, yes. So then eventually we did get to the Constitution. At that point, we definitely solved the negotiating part, which is that under the executive branch, aka the presidency, they have darn near unilateral authority to negotiate treaties with other countries and impose taxes, tariffs on all kinds of stuff with other nations. So because you have that centralized figure as the president, they were able to be the single point that other countries come to negotiate with and work with. Everything else definitely is delegated to Congress when it comes to the creation of laws and also monetary policy, aka spending. But the second bit of the Constitution is that they actually explicitly state that the federal government has the ability to levy taxes and create currency for the sake of collecting taxes effectively. All right, let's fast forward a little bit to 1870s, 1880s, 90s, right as we start 1900s. Well, that whole federal government thing as the only people issuing out currency didn't work out too well. And as a result, regional banks were people that were allowed to issue their own banknotes. What the banknote is effectively paper money, but is you can take this banknote, go redeem it at that bank, and they will give you X amount of gold, reserve, or even treasury bills. The reason that we got to this agreement is that there was later legislation passed where the U.S. government created a thing where, look, as a regional bank, if you come buy U.S. treasuries and then store them with us, we will allow you to issue banknotes against what you have with us. This is early fractional reserve banking, and we see where the banks have to have a certain amount of treasuries as their backstop to be able to lend against, and then at that point, they can issue banknotes, and then the banknotes go to the regional banks, and then those banknotes go to their customers. Another issue at this time, though, is that because the banks are regional and you have to go to the bank to redeem it, that means that not all the banknotes are trading at the same price everywhere. So wherever you go throughout the country, one of the things they talked about in the book was there was this the math equation, which is how much is your note worth? What is the public trust that this bank is actually going to survive and not go under, as some of the banks around the time had an issue to do. So because of that, your dollar here is not a dollar everywhere, especially the farther you go, that dollar goes equally not as far, which is, I mean, that doesn't sound like a great way to do it, to be honest with you.
Nope.
I like my money having value everywhere at the same value.
Yeah.
At this point, we also get to another one. So we got two more things that are really the issues of the time. So number one, your money's not the same everywhere. Number two, low reserves equals low liquidity. And during times of high liquidity or high demand, if you will, like harvests, the issue is that not enough people can get enough money out of the bank to transact. And then you get to this point where you actually start creating bank runs because there's just not enough money in the bank to be able to transact with everybody. So in the time of a harvest where everyone is, harvesting all the crops, trying to sell all of it, people are trying to buy stores for winter, trying to do planning for the long term, the lack of money actually constricts the amount of economic activity that is available at any given time. And, well, it's harvest as well, so these things aren't going to last forever. So you kind of got to get it now. And then lastly, this actually created a bit of a snowballing effect, which is that banks were like, oh, wow, we're going to have a lot of demand coming up in the near future. We need to start hoarding the money, if you will, so that way we have money to give out to people. But if you're holding on to the money, it means you're not giving out the money, meaning that you're kind of creating this, like, it's compounding on itself, which is that people want money, you can't give them money, in fears that you're not going to have enough money to give out to people later. So it's because you're trying to foresee the run on the bank in the future, you're creating a run on the bank now and the future, and it's just a compounding effect. All right. Overall, Will, how does this time period sound? Because this sounds pretty chaotic, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, so the whole problem was brought on by the banks not having the stuff in the bank that the other people were trading the notes for, right? Because it's fractionalized reserve lending. Yeah. So The whole problem stems from, like, hey, I get $100 worth of gold and I give out $1,000 to everybody. And now when everyone comes for their $1,000 worth of gold, it's like, ah, damn, I've only got 100. So like, it's literally all just bad, like bad lending practice that causes this whole sort of thing. So
I think
yeah.
it's this time period. I'm actually not going to give too much flack to the fractional reserve banking system, because it's how you try to generate, how to try to keep an economy going. I think that this version is not nearly as bad as the version that we have today, which is also fueled by public spending or government spending, if you will. But in this time, this is, like, in my opinion, one of like the lesser or like least benign versions of actual fractional reserve banking, because they're doing it at lower levels. So the issues that they're seeing is not that the fractional reserve banking is the issue itself. The issue is that there's just not enough money to go around in this booming economy where people are actually trying to, like, live their lives, invest, buy stuff, spend money, that kind of stuff. Is that what you got out of it, or what would you say is like the biggest issue they're facing?
Not at all, man. The whole thing to me, and perhaps is just my preference coloring it, is that it's all just a bunch of people lying about how much stuff there is. You know, it's like, and then when they're called on it, it's like, oh no, there's gonna be a bank. It's like, yeah, no shit, you idiot. You fucking gave out more money than there was value that backs it. So like, yeah, that could happen.
Yeah. Notably, though, in this time, when they did have those bank runs, it kind of was one of those times where, like, you are SOL. If the ledger says you have money with the bank, but the bank physically has no more money to give out. Because this time, they really did do bailouts. There was no FDIC insurance for depositors. That came later. But it did spark the idea of, what if...
all that shit... Go ahead.
Go for it.
I was just going to say that all that shit is layer 2 bullshit stacked on top of other bullshit that shouldn't be there to begin with. You know, it's like, yeah, FDIC insured. Well, who pays for that? Oh, the taxpayer. Oh, the guy that, like, they take the money from at force of gunpoint. Or like, hey, we'll throw you in jail. You know, so it's like, it's not actually insured. It's not actually like some company that's playing the insurance game, which is also a scam, right? This comes from, we'll just print more money and give it to you if you lose it. If you're an idiot and you lose the stuff that you're holding, then hey, like, congratulations, we'll just give you more of it, and hopefully you don't fuck that up too. And it's just like, it really puts into perspective. One of the things that I learned from this book was Gresham's law, which is like that bad money will always outcompete good money, which is essentially it comes from this this financialist who wanted to make fun of this banker named Gresham, and he was like, yeah, like, I see you, like, clipping coins over there, and like making 5-cent nickels that actually only have 4 cents worth of nickel in it, or whatever the fucking thing was. Like, when other people will accept bad money, then bad money will outcompete good money every single fucking time. And so when you have banks getting into, like, these terrible practices of, like, giving out more shit than they have, then other banks got to do it too. And then they do it more to be competitive. And then it just turns into like a, who can build the biggest, like, Ponzi scheme quickest that more people rely on. And then the whole thing gets rugged when people actually, like, try and extract the value out of this big Fugazi that they've built. So, like, I don't know. I don't see any way around it. Like, they were doing what is the natural thing to happen. But it's like, yeah, when you build a big old like stack of bullshit and it comes crashing down, then it's like, ah, damn it, we've built this big old stack of bullshit. And then the people who buy into it thinking that it's sound are the ones that are really hurt. You know, like, people who buy into the dollar system, into the fiat dollar system right now, where you get paid a promissory note that is printed out of thin air from the Federal Reserve, given to the United States, which the United States will pay back to the Federal Reserve at some unknown point in time, like way off near in the future. It's like when we trade around these $20 bills everywhere, one Chuck E. Cheese token, right? It's one government promise unit to the Fed That's all that it is. And it's not backed by anything. And it's like, this is what we, like when I go to my job and I knock towers over, right? I get a whole bunch of these Chuck E. Cheese tokens. I get a whole bunch of these $20 bills, which I can then go and trade for some other thing. But it's not, there is nothing behind it other than like the government promises that at some point in time, at some unknown future date, it's going to pay back the Federal Reserve one Chuck E. Cheese token worth of 20 units of God knows what. Eventually, at some point, 20 bottle caps, 20 gold nuggets, 20 unborn babies. Who the fuck knows? But the point is, like, it's all bad money, and it just keeps printing more and more and more. And this story in the beginning, I agree, it is like the least vampiric or the least horrible, heinous version of it that we have seen. It was failing them too, just like less catastrophically. And we've got a more stable system now, but it just does the same thing more effectively at a slower rate or maybe a faster rate, and brainwashes more people quicker, faster, better, more effectively, and I don't know, imbues itself into all the things that we live and breathe and work with. I don't fucking know. I'm kind of rambling now. Stop me
you're
at any
good.
time.
Yeah. I'll say this in defense of my theory that I'm putting out here is that part of the reason that I don't think this is nearly as terrible as the system we have today is that this is still the time period where we had backed currencies, meaning that those banknotes are actually backed by something and they are redeemable. So because of that, we are still limited, or the whole money supply is theoretically limited by whatever it was backing it. In this case, it was gold. And by the way, they were still having the a very classic argument that we've talked about many times on here, which is bimetallism or bimetallism, which is that trading in gold is cool because the gold is always worth something. Trading in silver is cool because the silver is always worth something. Trading at both at the same time is not as cool because the ratio between those two is constantly in flux. So it kind of creates a similar issue, which is like, okay, this note is good for 1 gold, but this 1 gold might be 12 silver or 9 silver, depending on the day, based on how it goes.
Arbitrage. Yep, you got an opportunity in there.
Exactly. Alrighty, tell you what, let's take it over to the catalyst for it all. So back in 1907, there's a bit of a famous bank run. This is where they really highlight the ideas going on and the private system at place, which is that the banks are backed by private investors. And we talked about how there's no backstop. Well, theoretically, there's a small backstop, and that is the private banks that are the larger bank that your regional bank banks with. It was this weird, like kind of like shell game where you have a state bank. The state bank keeps their money with the regional bank. The regional bank keeps their money with the bank in New York. And then it all kind of goes back to New York, and it's like, oh, the state bank is running low on funds. Hey, regional bank, can I get some more money? And they're like, okay, yeah, we'll do our little like loan thing. And then the regional bank is to a point where it's like, oh crap, I need more money. And then they go to the New York bank, and the New York bank is like, I'm running out of money. And then they call up our boy JP Morgan in 1907, and they say, hey, JP Morgan, we're running low on funds. This is your bank. Can you help us out? And then he's like, I am going to try. Try he did. Succeed he did not. The issue is that wasn't quite enough, and it just wasn't reliable, relying on a single man to back this whole system. They tried, but it failed. The end result of this bank run in 1907 is that they launched the National Monetary Commission. This is where we get the introduction of Mr. Aldrich. He is going to be a key player in our legislation going forward here in a bit. But what the whole point of this commission was is that they wanted to study the European central banks and see if that system might be able to alleviate the issues that we're seeing here. Notably, what they looked at is they're looking at elastic currency, basically a currency that can expand and contract with the demand. They're looking for rediscounting of commercial paper. What that means is pretty much your state bank has loans going out, and it's saying, oh crap, I don't have the money to actually back these. Can I get some more money by rediscounting it to my regional bank? So they make another loan with the regional bank, but it's at a slightly lower interest rate. Therefore, it's still sustainable. And then additionally, regional goes to New York goes to whoever. But in the other countries, what they have is they have that central bank, meaning that their regional banks can do that rediscounting with the central bank that has the ability to expand or contract the currency supply based on the demand. And that's kind of how we get the federal funds rate of today, which is the rate that banks lend to each other. After this, we also have the idea of central reserve pooling, aka we got to call JP Morgan at some point once we get down that road and hope that his bag of money is big enough to sustain everything else coming down here. With the central bank method, what they notice is that if you have the reserve pooling with the central bank, and they also have the ability to have an elastic supply that expands and contracts, it's this nice little dual prong attack to the issue at hand. And then the last thing they talked about is that with a centralized bank, theoretically, you are getting professional management. And what they mean by that is that this should be the institution that is the most experienced, the most learned, the best at math. They can really rip that slide rule left and right. They can do the abacus real good. And that theoretically, you should have the best expertise centralized in this one location. So that way, it's smart people doing good stuff. And then theoretically, they're also still learning from each other. So that should be the highest. If you can get all those smart people, the smart of the smart together, you have a central point to go to instead of a competition for talent where you have spreading out of all these talented people that are able to do the math, if you will. Do you foresee any issues with that?
Well, I mean, when you got centralization, you got one point of failure.
Ah,
Ding, ding, ding.
that you do. This original study led to one of the movements that he talks about in the book, which is the populist movement, aka the everyman, who is looking at the centralization and says, I don't like centralization in the government, and I don't like centralization in monopolies, aka Wall Street taking over. So this is kind of where we see the birth of one of the big oppositional groups to this original idea, and that is the populists. And what's interesting about this one for me is that it mirrors a lot of what we see today with political issues, is that it really was geographically based. The populists were mostly people that were in the South, were in the West, that are in sparsely populated areas. It's the rural versus the urban. It is when you're urban, everyone's together, everything is so close, you don't deal with the issues that rural deals with, and you also don't get the benefits that rural gets, which is that it's the spreading out, it's the freedom, it's the openness. You can build specific communities instead of having one giant homogenized community kind of thing. So there you go. That's the populists. All right, Will, I'm going to turn it over to you. Now we have the great debate. We have private ownership versus public ownership. I want you to take one of those and give me the best pitch that you can for it. Why would you want a centralized bank to be privately owned or publicly owned?
Well, I wouldn't want a centralized bank, and I definitely wouldn't want it to be either privately or publicly owned. But I'll go ahead and play along. If you get it privately owned, then it's quicker to move, more nimble. It can change things and make decisions fast. Whereas if it's like publicly owned, then it's like you fall into the problem of everything that is government, with the bureaucracy, the drudginess, the slowness, the ineffectiveness, yada yada yada. So that's my 2 cents on that. What do you think, Z?
I think you nailed it. So a lot of it comes down to control, which goes to all the points that you just talked about. If it's private, less cooks in the kitchen. Theoretically, you're going to have better cooks in the kitchen. Additionally, if it's private and not public, it means that you're not subject to the whims of whatever the flavor of the day is, meaning that you're able to chart a course long term and stick to it, as opposed to go with whatever the majority wants at any given moment. At the same time, though, if you are doing this, it means that you're also not exposed to politics. And like we've talked about many times, like Frederick Bastiat from The Law talks about, which is that when people realize that they can just vote themselves the money from the government coffers, there's no incentive to not do that. So if you keep it under private control, you can kind of stave off those cravings and stop that cycle from happening. All right, tell you what, I'll take the public idea. So public control means that it's spread out and you have more people giving input on things instead of just getting driven by a specific group of people that might have their own specific interests. Secondly, we're talking about money supply, which is, at the end of the day, slightly controlled by the federal government. Therefore, you could say it's a public good. And you could get into this situation where you have a tragedy of the commons, which is that the money supply, which is used by everyone, can be weaponized by a few. So this theoretically should be a thing that is under government control, aka under public control. Additionally, there already exist private banks. So why would we make the private banks have an even more private bank because we can theoretically have this like dual system where the private banks can rely on a public bank as a backstop, especially if that public bank is run by the government, which is supposed to have the input of the people. Oh, and then additionally, going back to if it's a public good, the whole point is that if it's under public control, it means that everyone has input, meaning that it's trying to serve everyone instead of just trying to serve a few, as theoretically the money system should, because at the end of the day, we all have to use whatever money we come up with. Do you have anything to add to the idea of a publicly controlled central bank?
I think you hit it pretty well on the head, and like, I still think that they're both bad because I think the central bank is bad. But I understand that like you're making the argument from the perspective of the book, which is supposed to test us on like what's the opposite of our, our general meanings and things.
Oh, for sure. Exactly. But additionally, one of the things that I really got out of this book is that this gives you the context behind everything going on. This is people are trying to deal with the issue at hand. They got a bunch of people together that are theoretically experienced, theoretically good at doing math. They can actually multiply by interest rates. And this is what they came up with. They looked at other stuff that exists in other countries, which that's doing your research. And this is what they came up with. They say, look, at the current time, these other countries seem to be doing pretty well with this whole central bank idea. We don't have a central bank. They have a modern or industrial country at the time. We are a fledgling industrial country. What's different here? So I appreciate the historical context.
Yeah, and I did like that this book was more of a storytelling book than it was like a you should believe it, my type of thing kind of book. It reminded me a lot of Hijacking Bitcoin book by Roger Ver.
Exactly.
It's like, no, Roger Ver's a bad guy, and it's like, nah, here's just a story of some stuff that happened, and it's like we got kind of the other angle of it in the Creature from Jekyll Island book, and this book tells it from a more like detailed and like their side of the story type perspective. So I appreciated that a lot about it.
Absolutely. All right, so we covered the public, we covered the private. That was a great debate. Will, did they pick one or did they split the baby? What do you remember?
I don't remember. Did they split the baby?
They split the baby.
Okay, that's what I was inclined to think.
Yes. So they ended up going semi-private. What they mean by that is that they're going to have 12 regional banks that are under the Federal Reserve Board that is in Washington. So the Federal Reserve Board will be government-appointed employees, and then each of the individual reserve banks in their regions will support the banks for the regions. At the time, this makes sense. No internet, no phone, electricity is just coming online. So can you control everything from a single location? Arguably no. Regional control? Yeah, sure, it makes sense. And it also kind of gives you a little bit of control. You got both parties with a hand on the steering wheel. Meaning you have people in the public sector that are able to control interest rates. And this is actually where we see the invention of the dual mandate, which is that the Federal Reserve Board is charged with the idea of having stable prices and full employment. And then we also have the regional banks who are the actual bankers who are like, okay, I'm here to make sure that the banks have a backstop in case they need more money to figure out what's going on. And then at the end of the day, all the regional banks will talk to the bank in Washington and be like, hey, we're running low on funds. Can you expand the money supply a little bit? And they're like, yes, we will buy up more bonds and inject capital into the markets that way. Alrighty. Let's get into some of the key players. Up first, we already talked about him, Nelson Aldrich. He was a Republican senator, and he was one of the people that really kind of crafted the idea of the central bank, and then also helped craft some of the legislation. Next up, we get Frank Vanderlip. He was a Wall Street banker. He was seeking reform, but he was also definitely in the political arena. So he was dealing with all the bureaucrats, if you will. Additionally, we have Paul Warburg, not Wahlberg, Warburg. He was a technical architect, and he was actually one of the people that initially proposed the idea that the advisory board should go look at European-style banks, and then he was one of the people that also helped craft the legislation that went into it and the overall structure of the idea. And then lastly, we have the big man himself, the president of the United States, or the newly elected president at the time, Woodrow Wilson. He was one of the people that really demanded public oversight, and he rejected Aldrich's plan initially. So this is where we see some of the opposition coming in. So Aldrich, a senator, but also still very much in the banking-centric model. Warburg, a banker and architect as well for this. And then Woodrow Wilson, other side of the fence, president, Politico, wants public demand. And if you remember, Woodrow Wilson was also part of the then time progressive movement, which was trying to push things for like minimum wage and a bunch of other social programs that he eventually did end up imposing while he was president. All right, now we get to the fun meeting.
Tax. Oh boy,
income tax as well. Yes, that was one of them. They were saying we need more taxes because tariffs aren't cutting it. It's like,
yeah,
well, now we're on the opposite side of the coin. It's like, well, we could probably use more tariffs and we don't need as much income tax. Funny how that one works out.
Yeah.
And then we did also mention JP Morgan. JP Morgan was influential in the 1907 crises, but after that, he really just kind of stays as a private figure. But he was kind of like the proof that the system entirely private was not working. Alrighty. So 1910, we get the famous meeting. Will, where did the meeting happen?
It was on Jekyll Island.
Hey, how did they describe the meeting at Jekyll Island?
You cut out there for a second. Can you say again?
How did they describe the meeting at Jekyll Island?
It was like a super duper crazy secret meeting where like they went to go, hunt some ducks or whatever, and nobody was supposed to know that they were going there. They ended up like bribing a train, like a train conductor guy. I don't know if they bribed him, but one of the guys pulled him off to the side, had a secret conversation with him, and then he was all like, "Hey guys, just so you know, the press is not gonna know that you're here." It was a whole bunch of like secrecy and people not supposed to talk about it, and yeah. What was your question again? Like, am I just
no? That's pretty much it. I was gonna say the way that this book also framed it was like this is also like a very nice bougie retreat. They're going to an island in the Carolinas. I'm pretty sure they said that they were playing golf and tennis a good bunch between meetings.
Yeah,
and it was
it's like one of the wealthiest retreats.
Yeah, this is the bankers getting together, having a good time as well. So there you go. Bit of a different perspective. The book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, kind of gives you the idea of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, rainy, stormy night, thunderstorm, Frankenstein's monsters about to break out of the basement anyways. Like, this is different. This is like me and the boys getting together for a golf retreat, and we're also going to talk about money at the same time. So what happens here is that Aldrich organizes it. Warburg starts spouting his ideas, giving his ideas for central reserve, rediscounting between the different banks, having the layers, having the elastic currency, and then also having professional management. That's why he got the bankers together, because he said, look, we're going to need you guys, because you guys are smart, to do great things for your private banks. But if we're getting like the bank together, we're going to need some big hitters up here. And then the reason that they had this was in secret was one, political backlash, but two, they also wanted as minimal interference at the same time. They wanted everybody on the island get together. We're going to stay here for a bit. We're just going to live, relax, try to put out the best ideas that we can, really get something good together. And then after that, that's when we're going to put it out. Alrighty. So after this, the outcome of it is we get this thing called the Aldrich Plan, which became the Fed's kind of grandfather. But once it got leaked to the public, it became pretty radioactive immediately, and not a whole lot of people wanted to touch it. This is where we get Woodrow Wilson is actually elected in 1912. Woodrow Wilson, as we talked about, not a fan. Well, he's the president now, so he's kind of one of those signatures that you need. So with that being said, it means that this brilliant plan they cooked up on Jekyll Island between golf and tennis is dead on arrival, and nobody wants to touch it. So what does Wilson advocate for? He advocates for public control, decentralization, and no Wall Street dominance, explicitly trying to ensure that we don't get the alleged banking cartel, as the Creature from Jekyll Island puts it. After that, we get a bit of a compromise. We get what's called the Glass-Owens Bill. It's a compromise where we get the 12 regional banks, we get Washington control, mixed governance, meaning that you're going to have both politicians and technical elite bankers, if you will, people with experience. And then we also do get the idea of rediscounting on commercial paper, meaning that commercial paper or the banknotes will be rediscounted, but the actual treasury bills will not be. Ultimately, this is the final system that goes into play, and we do adopt the central banking system now known as the Federal Reserve. Alrighty. After that, let's see how it worked out. Well, in the early years, well, what happened right around the time of 1913, maybe for the 4 years following?
Oh, well, that's when income tax was created. I believe the Titanic sunk. I'm pretty sure the Federal Reserve was created.
Titanic sinks, yes. Some people that were critical to the passing of the infrastructure unfortunately died on that.
How
But
convenient.
Think
How
bigger.
convenient.
Think world. What happened to the world for the first time?
Was that World War One?
Yes, sir. It was World
1913?
War One.
That was in 1913.
Yes,
Okay.
it was.
All right. Well, there you go.
Actually, was
That
it? Or
happened.
did it end? Gosh, am I an idiot? Did it end in 1911? Or am I getting my notes mixed up?
I have no idea, man. I know 11/11/11.
World War One, 1914 to 1918. Excuse me, not
Okay.
1913,
All right.
1914.
Yeah.
So, Will, what do you do during times of war back in the day? How do you raise money to
Yeah.
to fund
Tax
the
the
war?
fuck out of the citizens.
You do
That's what
that,
you
but you also do something else.
You also borrow money, print money.
Here's some, you print money by doing something. Do you remember what Captain America in his movie was originally doing before he was like on the front lines?
Oh yeah, he was fucking convincing people to buy war bonds. He was a
There you
fucking
go.
shill for the government.
There you go, war bonds. And well, we just created this thing that sells bonds. So Federal Reserve kind of actually gets off to a decent start with World War One starting off, and the government's like, we need money to fight a war. We usually sell bonds. Wow, we just made something that also sells bonds. Boom, easy home run. It's like, wow, this kind of works. During this time, they create the discount window. They create the elastic currency through the selling and buying of the war bonds. And then they actually start to stabilize some of those markets that we talked about that had seasonality. Like with the big harvest coming up, people need to borrow more money in order to buy stuff so they can store it, so they can sell it later on. So overall, it's working out pretty good. 1920s, we get to they coordinate interest rate policy, meaning that they actually get all of their interest rates together, and it goes to that board in Washington they talked about. So now the board in Washington has even more to do. Okay, cool. This looks like it's going pretty good. We have open market operations. The New York Fed becomes really, really strong during this time. But then, do you remember what happens at the end of the 20s?
The Great Depression.
The Great
Oh, wait, no.
Depression. It is the Great Depression.
Oh yeah, it was right. Okay.
That's right. So during this time, theoretically, we just made this thing that should stop bank runs. But what if the bank run is so big that the Fed actually can't deal with it?
Oopsies.
Yeah, oopsies. This is where we get the creation of the FDIC, or the Federal Deposit Insurers. I don't want to say corporation. Can't remember. Forgive me. Committee. There you go. Thank you.
I don't know.
So,
yes.
Yep. Bank run in the 1929, I want to say. Or I think it's 1928, actually. Yes. Because there's a famous picture of they draw 1929 written top to bottom, and then the 8 is a fat man that's being hung by the 9. Yeah, great. So we get that. During this time, we also get a lot of gold outflows. So, all that gold that was theoretically backing your currency, well, it's drying up quick. And then do you remember what happened when the gold started to dry up? What did they do to stop it?
Man, you're asking me a whole bunch of very specific, detailed questions, and
This is a
I
big
am
one.
like,
This is a big one that you care about, because the government did something to the people about gold.
they fucked them, took them off the gold standard, perhaps.
No, they took their gold.
Oh yeah,
They confiscated it.
Yep.
And then we get the 19
bastards.
Yep, and then we get the 1935 Banking Act. Alrighty, that's pretty much the end of the history lesson. Here's what the book kind of says about the Fed now. We have a stronger board in Washington. We reduced the autonomy of the regional banks, and we centralized it more in Washington as technology has evolved. We got radio, we got phones, we got faster travel, we got all that kind of stuff. And this is also the era where the government really starts to increase. So think end of World War II, Cold War. It's the ramping up of government control to try to fight the Soviets. As a result of that, we end up in the modern era now where we have large government pretty much. And then after that, we get some good stuff, like we get inflation of the 1970s after we go off the gold standard then for the final time. And at that, they were like, wow, if we are honoring the gold, we have printed so much money that theoretically someone, like another nation or two, could send a boat or multiple boats to our shores and literally take all of the gold out of North America from the banks. It's like, well, that's not good. So they do that. And then ultimately, we get the most modern stuff, which is the 2008 financial crisis, where the good old Federal Reserve was insuring mortgage-backed securities, selling them on the open market, bundled with good securities, claiming that they were good securities. And then when housing prices decreased by like 5 to 10%, all of those loans suddenly went bad. All of the investors now suddenly underwater. And then we get the ultimate bailing out by the Fed for all the private companies. So,
Hooray.
Yeah. Slightly different story after the first 10 years. First 10 years, they were doing pretty good. After that, it went downhill pretty quickly. Alrighty. So I'm going to summarize. Here's the last of our hyping up this guy. After this, we can start getting after him. The arguments for the Federal Reserve. The old system was doomed. Banks were collapsing all the time. We had runs on the bank. We didn't have enough money circulating to actually help keep the economy going during times of high demand, like harvest season and stuff. There were fundamental structural flaws that the Fed would theoretically fix, which is that if we have an elastic supply, we can expand and contract when needed. We can also back the banks so that it creates a layer of insurance for the people with money in the banks, which is that because we have a new backstop with more money and a centralized pool, this should theoretically create that final backstop that we definitely can never blow through. 1929, we could definitely never blow through. And then additionally, we also have our rediscounting mechanism, meaning that banks can loan to each other at lower rates that keep the other banks in check. So because the Federal Reserve has the rediscounting ability, it means that there's yet again another layer of a backstop for the banks. So backstop for the people, backstop for the banks. So people aren't going to lose money, banks aren't going to lose money. Win-win, right? No downside, no trade-offs, right? Thomas Sowell hasn't been born yet. Now,
just gotta wait for that sweet, sweet black man to save us all from our economic horribleness.
Yeah. And then 2 final notes. The hybrid model appears to be working. The hybrid model does give expertise and gives credence to the people, the biggest players in the system. So that way, those people can act as their own mini backstop for the system. Money is private. The government's not getting their hands too deep in it. But at the same time, there is still some control by the government. Theoretically, the people vote for their representatives. They vote for the president. The president and the Senate can appoint and confirm people that go to the Federal Reserve. Those people on the Federal Reserve can theoretically work with the bankers to ensure that all parties are being satisfied and that everyone works together. And then lastly, this is kind of like after the fact looking. They didn't know this at the time, but the U.S. was about to go through one of the biggest booms that the world has pretty much ever seen in the post-World War II era, because we have this more modern system where you have the ability to expand the money supply. It enabled the boom that the post-war boom, the giant production, all of the great stuff that we saw in pretty much post-45 all the way through 1960s, late 60s, until we get to the 70s and 80s, where we start reaping the repercussions. We see hyperinflation, stagflation, and all that good stuff. All right. Am I missing anything else? Did the author want to get any other points to say that the Fed is good because X?
Let me refer to my notes. Oh, son of a bitch. It's a little bit more difficult. I'd only taken a few notes for this book club. But let's see.
You did have a really good quote. I don't know if you remember. I remember seeing this one come across the Telegram. You were saying that banks don't deal in money; banks deal in credit.
That was what I was about to pull up. Is only capitalists deal in money. Bankers deal in credit. So it's like, if you're spending your own money, you're a capitalist. If you're spending someone else's money, congratulations, you're a banker. And it's like, what a type of person to be, you know? Not my preference, anyways. You don't want an honest dollar, you want a scarce dollar. Yeah, I mostly just didn't like this book. But
That's fair.
Or I didn't like the idea of this book. When I got to reading it, it's like, whatever, it's a story.
Yeah. I will say this. From like the literature perspective, it's actually a pretty well-written book. It creates a narrative, it creates characters, it follows their plot lines, and it gives you some conflict resolution. Like overall, it's actually it's a good story. It's a good story, well written, and it's concise enough. It's only 8 hours on Audible, as opposed to Adam Smith, the man who never knows how to finish a goddamn point.
Yeah. My God.
Alrighty. Thus ends the glazing, as the kids say. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk to the folks at home. Will, do you have the thing?
Glazing. I do have the thing. It's on my phone cover, and it says, "Chat motherfucking shoutouts." Hey, look at that.
Well done, sir. Well done. All right. We got our good buddy over on the other continent there. The Herc. He says, "Good morning. Good morning to you, sir. I hope you're having an excellent Saturday morning. Having a good time listening to us ramble about the Federal Reserve and a country that hopefully you don't care too much about anymore." But you do have a very good point there. He says, "Zenith, what happens when 80% of the public has an IQ of 79? Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure the threshold for being actually like prescribed by a doctor as you are like actually like mentally retarded is 78. So if 80% of the public is 1 point above it, well, that's when you start electing Terry Crews as president, and Crocs are the most popular footwear. So we're halfway there. Now we just need to see Terry Crews go on a political run.
A cunt hair away from retardation. I'll say that you get 89%, or you get 89 IQ results when 80% of the population, like if you're like, democracy is not always like, popular voting isn't always the best solution. You know, if all the people that are in charge are a bunch of idiots, then it's like you get the same results as if one person in charge is an idiot. So when everyone's doing a whole bunch of dumb shit, then you're gonna have a bad time. So that's what I think.
I'm reminded of, there was a cartoon that came out from the channel Freedom Tunes back when there was a proposal during the presidential election for a wealth tax on people over $100 million. And it's one guy trying to explain to a crowd of idiots that, no, this is bad because it's going to ruin the economy. And everyone just looks at him and goes, you don't have $100 million. Why do you care? And he goes, no, I have a retirement that is invested in companies worth over $100 million. So if they're forced to sell off their company, your and my retirement all go down heavily. And they're like, oh, but you don't have $100 million. What do you care? He's like, no, the math, I'm drawing it out. You don't have $100 million. What are you talking about? It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I imagine it feels a lot like repeatedly hitting your head on a brick wall trying to explain things to people. But then again, I'm also assuming that I'm not one of the people that has a 79 IQ. So theoretically, you get, as Will says, the two assholes on the internet spouting ideas, and they probably suck.
It's an awful bold move of you to be presuming you don't have an 89 IQ.
Yeah. Gosh, that would be a hell of a bell curve. Oh my gosh. 80% at 79.
I mean, most people are at 100. Like that is the
average, the median, if you will.
Yep.
Although there have been some studies that show that if you measure IQ specifically, the collective IQ of society has been increasing. But part of the argument that they make is that people are just getting better at like learned knowledge instead of wisdom. So you could argue that they're just getting better at taking IQ tests, so therefore they're scoring higher.
Yeah. What is IQ? It measures ability to learn, right?
I think it measures. Have you taken an IQ test?
Yeah,
What do you remember the test being? Like, what were the questions they
don't.
asked you?
I got no clue. I don't remember.
I remember
I just know my number. It's the only
a
important
couple.
part.
Hey, 69. Let's go.
Hell yeah, my IQ is 13, baby.
Oh. I remember the IQ test was is a lot of like shape and pattern recognition, and then the ability to like rotate a 3D object in your mind and being able to like understand like what the other side would look like if you did certain movements with it. So it's like spatial tracking, object permanence, pattern recognition, and then I guess you could call like slight math part of it. So there you go. I don't know. According to the IQ test, I think it told me I was like 118, and I'm like, all right, cool, 60th percentile. Let's go.
Yep. That's right about where I'm at, I think.
Yeah. Hey, it makes sense. I like it.
I think you're supposed to go to like an actual shrink to take an actual one, but you know, the online ones are fun too. It's like those Facebook quizzes that used to be so popular all that time ago.
Oh, bummer. If only I could find out what flavor of ice cream my personality is.
What is my ice cream IQ? That's the important question. We only ask the important questions here on the Degen Roundtable. Like, what happens when, I hope this guy pulls away from the gas pump because his pump is still in his car. And that would be very funny.
Gotcha. I'll tell you what, before you get out to pump your gas, how about you read off this guy? I got to reload the beer. Be right back.
We've got Mr. Hexicon Lost in Asia saying propaganda. And you're absolutely right, broski. Everything is actually propaganda. Even the Degen Roundtable stream is propaganda. We're trying to get you to listen to our thoughts. So that way you I don't know, listen to our thoughts and do cool things. So it's good to see you, broski. Welcome. Why is I cannot. Okay, there. Now I can see the stream.
All right.
And
that's reload
it chat
complete. That is it.
Very good.
By the way, folks at home, if you have any interesting quips, funny remarks, or excellent, well thought out arguments against the Federal Reserve, now is your time to do so. We will read them out, and we will probably bandwagon with you because they're probably a good idea not to have a centralized bank.
Hell yeah. I think that it's a bad idea, but I don't. I mean, the thing that we have works for now until it doesn't, you know? So I don't know. Maybe there will be a better thing later, but
I'll tell you what, run with that idea, Will. We gave the author some kudos. We said, yes, the Federal Reserve was working really good for the first 10 years when they were doing things like selling war bonds, expanding the liquidity of the currency to ensure that during times of high demand, like harvest, people had money to transact. But we're seeing problems. So, I mean, would you say that the problems we're seeing are continuations of old problems or new problems caused by the Fed?
I think it's probably new problems, a different flavor of old problem, perhaps. But I don't really know. I know that like my power is slowly leaking away as a result of the things. It's not like a quick poison. It's not like I'm getting stabbed in the heart. It's like I'm being slowly poisoned for a long time, and I'm not terribly fond of it. But it's like I'm still able to function inside of it. You know, it's like I don't know. That's what I see. What do you think, Z?
I think that it's a lot of new problems. I think that it expands even beyond the Fed and creates problems that create a vicious cycle that we see today. The biggest argument that I would give against the Federal Reserve is that the idea was that from the founders initially was the way that we set up government was that ambition would check ambition, which is that people are opposing each other. Only when you kind of got everyone or a majority of people, or even like a super majority, like 66% of people to agree on something, can you really move fast with the government.
Yeah.
What the Federal Reserve does is it kind of splits the baby on that stuff. And it enables the federal government to spend to oblivion, which is what we have seen as one of the largest issues of modern era.
Yeah.
When you get the federal government to start, like, I got to be clear here. The Federal Reserve is the thing that allows the federal government to spend as much as it does, because we get the infamous quote from that one guy. He says, there is an infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve. What? The whole point was that cash is finite, and we just needed to expand and contract slightly to accommodate for the waves, not just blow out the roof and go to the moon. Yes, we physically went to the moon, but that cost a lot of money. Rocket fuel is expensive.
Did we go to the moons? Did we go to
I'm
the moon?
claiming we did. I think
Maybe.
it's cooler if we did. It's a better mythology if you say that my forefathers went to the moon. You see that thing up there? We went there.
I mean, a campfire story is as good as any campfire story, I suppose. It is cool to believe that we went to the moon. I'll agree with you on that one.
Yeah. All right. Back to my argument, though. The Federal Reserve incentivizes bad behavior. That is my argument here. The Federal Reserve only weakens things in the long term to alleviate short-term gain. The whole point of having the hybrid model of the Federal Reserve is that you had private ownership and public governance, but instead you just signed off on the public governance and then just fueled them to the moon, at the same time fueling the bankers to the moon, because they're the people that get the money first, so they benefit the most. Therefore, you've created a system where both parties in control, benefit the most, and the people out of control, or with the least amount of political affluence, if you will, are the ones that really lose out on this. So you no longer have ambition checking ambition. You have ambition working with ambition against someone else's ambition that cannot.
It's a monopoly.
Precisely.
It's a
you have
fucking monopoly.
You have effectively created a new monopoly inside of the government.
Yep.
The government should have a monopoly on certain things, in my personal opinion. I think they're very clear about this and what they are in the 23 enumerated powers of the Constitution, but most notably being self-governance and violence, because you want a monopoly in one spot so that people aren't competing for that kind of stuff. Because otherwise you get breakdown of local rule, you get people actually being vigilantes and stuff, and in socialized society, that is explicitly what we're trying not to do.
For now.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add to that? You think the Fed incentivizes bad behavior?
I think you summed it up a lot better than I could have, man. That was a good summary.
Tell you what, I'm gonna kick the ball back over to you. Do you think there are any points that the author got wrong? Any good arguments against him? What do you got?
I will say that one thing that the Federal Reserve does well is that they pick a good chairman of the board named Jerome Powell to sing his sweet, buttery, smooth voice into my ear, so that way I feel better when they're describing how they're fucking us with their quantitative tightening and money printing and all that stuff. They did pick a cool guy to talk to us. So they created a neat celebrity that wouldn't have otherwise been there. That's pretty cool. And I wonder if, like, in this day and age of more and more and more information in podcasting and people being public figures and things, if like politicians are going to be even more of celebrity figures than they already were, which was quite a bit. And so like will we start seeing like, oh fuck, what's like a boring ass position? Like the Secretary of State being trained in like voice lessons in how to speak to people and cool things. I'll say that Jerome Powell did a very good job as an orator, in addition to whatever it was that he's actually doing as a federal chairman. So bit of an off-topic rambling.
No, I think actually hitting on a point that I was going to make, and it comes along the veins of modern problems require modern solutions.
Yeah.
And well, the Federal Reserve is a pre-modern institution, and I would argue it's kind of unable to deal with some of the issues that we're seeing in the modern era, which, by the way, Hexkin Lost in Asia, I think you nailed this one precisely. Says it's a forward guidance problem. Modern communication tools means that Jerome Powell's, the head of the Federal Reserve, his words, not his actions, move trillions in the markets. A speech can devalue or pump the markets instantly. I agree. The fact that communications has evolved so drastically and the markets have evolved with technology so drastically as well, which is we're no longer in the days where we have the pits on the New York Stock Exchange of people with a stack of actual stock certificates trying to bargain with people based on what the ticker up top is telling them. We now have markets that move billions of dollars in milliseconds, singular amounts of milliseconds, and people fight over who has the fastest fiber optic connection in order to beat out their competition.
Yeah.
The Federal Reserve, I think, was trying to solve issues of the time. And a lot of that issue was the fact that that the individual banks could not move fast enough to accommodate what they were seeing in real time. Because it's a lot faster to get 100 people to go to your local bank than it is to get the Bank of New York to send money to your regional bank to send money to your state bank. It's the amount of like travel time has decreased infinitely because of just electricity, the internet, instant communications, all that kind of stuff. And I just don't think that the Federal Reserve solves that problem anymore because, again, I think it's a little bit, I'm arguing kind of from the standpoint of like, we stand on the shoulders of giants to the point where it's like the economy has gotten to a point where it is no longer in need of the Federal Reserve. The government is in need of the Federal Reserve, but the actual banking institutions themselves, theoretically, if they are as sound money as they claim to be, they should not need the backing of the Federal Reserve in order to accurately serve their customers and be able to do business with other banks and other companies.
Yeah, and so what do we do now that the new need has arisen? I think Arceus had a question about that, didn't she?
He did. You beat him to it. He says, if we don't have a centralized bank, what do we do instead? And where is there a place where that alternative is working now? This is an excellent question. As the crypto bros, I think this is the part where we're supposed to tell you that Bitcoin solves all your problems and it's the magic bullet that cures everything. I'm here to tell you it's not. But it's actually not a bad place to start. One of the issues that we've seen with the Federal Reserve is that it's the ability to print money, and it looks like the ratchet only goes one direction. We're pretty famous for pulling up the old M2 money supply chart and showing you that it's literally just a line straight up into the right, and that the fluctuations are like slight spaghetti bends along the way, but overall it goes one direction. So theoretically, what if here's a small solution. What if you kept the same current system, but instead of pretty much having these, whenever the Fed dictates expansion or contraction of the money supply, you kind of do what Ethereum does, or what a lot of cryptocurrencies do, or what Bitcoin does, which is says, here's our release curve. We are going to be printing this much money into the future, and it will be injected into the system in these ways, and it's kind of first come, first serve. Through that kind of a system, the real winners would probably be people in the bond market that want to take it seriously, because then bond trading actually becomes pretty legitimate. At that point, there's kind of a second half of this that also comes up, which is that if you're doing this kind of a model, it means that the Federal Reserve is still setting the interest rates for the bonds that are released, or the interest rate is adjusted to whatever the market rate is at the time. Does that open it up to potential market influence? Yes. Is the bond market large enough that it's probably not possible that single individuals can control an entire market? Hopefully not. And even if it was, well, that's why we also have trust busting or monopoly busting laws in place to ensure that it's a free and open marketplace and it's not easily manipulated by this kind of activity. Again, I'm painting with a very optimistic brush on this one, I will admit, but there are options. So steady release or pre-planned release of funds into the market, that is a big an option. A partial or full return to the gold standard is also an option, but the issue with that one is that you might start seeing some of the issues that originally came up before the Fed was created. So if you remember the seasonality of things, when there's times of high demand, it means that you need more liquidity in the system. If you go to a backed currency, it means that you now have capped the amount of money in the system, and the only thing that can increase it is the velocity of money or the multiplication effect that you get from fractional reserve banking. So it does put a hard cap limit on everything. But theoretically, if you set that limit at what is the correct response or the correct rate, then it means that it should capture all the activity necessary inside of the economy. I would argue we have pretty good data these days about what the economy is doing, because, I mean, shoot, we can project GDP growth down to like 1/10 of a percentile, but then again, it's for a multi-trillion-dollar economy, so that's still a lot of money. But at the same time, I think that the argument against the Federal Reserve does lean heavily on the fact that modern technology and communication speed is so high, and data collection and data gathering is at the highest it has ever been by magnitudes. So you should be able to capture it all, but at the same time, I mean, this is probably where Adam Smith and Thomas Sowell are going to start yelling at me, which is that the marketplace is not what you think it is. The marketplace is all the individual transactions go on with every single person, and that's almost nearly impossible to capture. I'm not saying it is impossible to capture, but I'm saying it's a very big ask. But at the same time, I don't know, could be in the realm of possibility. I happen to think it is. What do you think, Will? Do you think we can accurately reflect the entire economy and plan around it, or is it just too much?
That question is so above my head and understanding that I'll just say
That's
I
fair.
have no idea. Probably. Could probably do it, you know. Like there's way more smart people that exist now just from a numerical perspective than there were back then. Just like from the raw number of people that exist in the world, you know. It's my 2 cents.
That's true. Arceus, to keep answering the question here, a lot of the stuff that I've proposed as well also starts with something that is beyond the Federal Reserve, which is that you have to curb the spending, because the way that governmental spending is going is it's only going up, and inflation also goes up, so it adds on top of it as well. You got to have some sort of fiscal discipline. Otherwise, pretty much any model that you show here is not going to work. Because theoretically, if we just went to a gold-backed currency, like instantaneously, and then we still kept government spending at the level that it is, the government would straight up run out of money. And people would start trying to collect on the debt. The debt would get defaulted on. Because hear me out. I don't think that there's $38 trillion worth of gold in Fort Knox right now. That's just a guess. I don't have that knowledge. I'm just guessing.
Well, like the number keeps going up, and I don't think the amount of gold inside Fort Knox keeps going up. Like,
correct. Yeah,
Maybe
there's
it's
also
borrowing against the paying capability of future taxpayers or something like that. But I don't think that the taxpayers even pay back the Fed. I could be wrong.
Yeah. Hear me out. I don't think it's getting paid off. I don't think the ability to pay it off exists. It's if anything, we go back to Hexkin's original answer here, which is that the Federal Reserve is a failure, but it's safe because the power of the U.S. military protecting the U.S. dollar is the world reserve currency. That is, like, you came in early with this one, dude. This is 4 minutes after stream started, and a minute and a half of that was intro, and the rest of it was me blabbing about a movie. But you had the answer right there, so shout out to you, sir.
Yep. He knows.
Oh, yeah. There's 100% not enough gold in the world. Tell you what, we'll do a quick Google search or a chat GPT to figure.
Well, like you look at what like gold's market cap is like 10 trillion. Because like Bitcoiners are always talking about flipping gold's market cap, or it's probably bigger now because the price of gold has shifted. But like, you know, that's the next big thing for Bitcoin to flip is the market cap of gold. So it's like 4 times the supply of gold. But like, we're not going to pay the debt off, and even if you did pay the debt off, then the cash wouldn't be anywhere because like look when I pull out, where is it? Oh, it's in my pocket, right? Right here, right? This fucking Chuck E. Cheese token right here, okay? You know what it says on it? It says the fucking, did I get the right side? Treasurer of the United States borrows 20-somethings from the Federal Reserve. So this only exists as long as that borrowing contract exists. As soon as the United States pays off that 20 units of something, then this disappears. It's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. So if we pay the debt off, then there's no more money in circulation. Or money is the wrong word. There's no more promissory notes in circulation, right? Because this is a promissory note. This is a promise to pay. This is essentially a blank check from the United States to the Federal Reserve saying like, hey man, I promise I'll give you 20-somethings at some point if you give me that piece of paper with the green decal on it right now. And then the United States gives that green decal off to, you know, the the industrial war machine, and they give it off to cocaine bird sex studies down in Uganda, and they give it to missile to what was it? Pakistani missile gender studies or some fucking bullshit. I can't remember like what all the things were. When somebody like
The
somebody
trans
like
operas in Venezuela.
yeah, it's like
Oh, wasn't
all
one
the
of them
weird things that the
condoms for
government
South
sends their money
Africa?
to. Yeah, condoms for South Africa, or $100 billion to Israel, or fucking like I don't know, maybe $20 to fix the water over in Flint, Michigan. Whatever the government spends all this omnibus money spending bill bullshit crap on, all this crap packed into this bill that's you have to carry it around in a wagon because they don't make print too small on paper. All of this stuff. What the government prints that, or the government doesn't print it out. The Fed prints it out, gives it to the government. The government sends it out to everybody, Ken Till and Effect style, and they go and they buy their Starbucks coffees. They go and they buy their bagel hot dogs from Love's gas station. They buy their pizza and their beer and their TV towers and their project managing and all whatever job you have. Right? That these people go out and spend this theoretical promissory notes on other things. And then at some point, we give them back to the government in the form of taxes. And then the government ferrets it away and does some fucking thing with it, right? But does it go back to the Federal Reserve? I don't know. But if they did pay it off, then the money wouldn't be in circulation anymore. So it's like we live on this big bouquet and dream of promises to pay something, but there is no payment. There is no something. There is no timeline. We just keep digging this hole bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's my interpretation. That's my monologue. I did just have a couple sips of caffeine earlier, so now I'm all fucking jacked and juicy and ready to fucking rock and roll, baby.
There you
So
go.
shout out to Loves and $2.15 gas. That was really fucking cool. I didn't know that gas was down to like $2.15 again. So that's pretty fucking sweet.
Some places it is. New Mexico, I think I'm seeing like 250. So
Yeah. I just left Kansas and it was like 240, and I was like, whoa, I guess Kansas is drilling a lot of oil. But like I got further south and like I'm about to hit Wichita here soon, and it's like 215. What the fuck? Why is it 215?
Speaking of high prices, Hexagon Lost in Asia coming back at us here. He says, does the Fed now rely on asset prices staying high, stocks, housing, etc., to prevent systemic collapse? If so, is that sustainable? The answer is no, it's not sustainable theoretically, but people have been saying that the US dollar is going to collapse since we went off the gold standard in the 70s, but we've sustained that for a good 50, 60 years at this point. So is it a bad bet betting on the current people to keep the system in place in some shape, way, or form? I think not really. But to get to your question, I think that it's kind of the other way around, actually, which is that asset prices staying high relies on the Federal Reserve. We talk about inflation a lot, which is just like it's the delta, it's the change in prices over time, but it's not accounting for the total price overall. We've been on this system for so long that, as we've seen with inflation, you can only bring down inflation, but it still means that the prices are going up, just not as much. Asset prices, I can definitely see the argument for it being a bubble, partly due to the fact that the Federal Reserve has really allowed the banking system to do what it does. So that way we can even get to these silly arguments about arguing if we should have a 50-year mortgage instead of the traditional 30-year mortgage, but we have the 30-year mortgage because the banking system is backed up by the Federal Reserve. And because we're able to make those kind of loans for this amount of property for the average person, it means that marketplace is open to the amount of competition that continues to drive prices up. If the Federal Reserve failed some way, was replaced, there's two options here. If you find a way to replace the Fed or end the Fed without causing systemic collapse of the economy overall, then it means that asset prices are probably going to stay where they are. They might make some correction, but it's definitely not going to be the correction that you would see if the entire banking system somehow went belly up and then we didn't bail it out again. If that was the case, then yes, you would absolutely see like the sell-off style effect that we saw back in the 2008 and just actually see real estate prices go down, see stock prices go down. All the speculation pretty much goes away because at that point we enter into an environment where money is not cheap, where Or you could go into the system where money is cheap, therefore it's worthless, therefore actually that would be hyperinflation of asset prices, because you'd see the effect that you saw during pre-World War II Germany, where like the Deutschmark went to just like infinite effectively. Anyways, back on track. Does the Fed rely on asset prices staying high? To a degree, actually, yes. Because when you get a loan, you have to put up collateral. Collateral can be many forms. It can be a company. It can be real estate. Some banks will even allow Bitcoin now. So there is collateral involved. Because the Fed gives out loans, it does rely on people having assets. The assets are the underlying collateral for the additional money coming out. Therefore, the printing of additional money in the form of fractional reserve banking, which the Fed does support, does rely on the asset prices. Theoretically, if your asset price drops, it means that it's really downside for whoever lent you the money. Because what it's saying is that this collateral that they gave you the money for is now worth less. So if you took it to the final conclusion, which is you default on the loan, that means that the bank now pretty much seizes whatever you had for collateral, and then you still got whatever you got. So if you got money, you got the money. You could do whatever you wanted with the money. Theoretically, it was for a specific purpose, like opening a business, buying a house, buying a car, that kind of stuff. So they can take the property, but if the property has devalued, but the value that you got out of the loan stays higher than that drop, then you kind of made money on it in a way. But yeah, when it comes to the Fed, though, we go back to what their dual mandate is and what Jerome Powell talks about, which is they're looking for full employment and stable prices. Well, the Fed hopes for stable prices, because if the prices are not stable, then it means that they're going to do something. Whatever they do, they really only have two options. They can change interest rates, or they can change the amount of money in circulation. Gosh, imagine prices drop and their answer is we reduce the amount of money in circulation. Well, that would be quantitative tightening and also go and coincide with interest rates. So it would get tighter, it would get harder. But gosh, I will say this. Will is correct when he looks at me and he says, why are you asking me that question? You think I have the answer. I'm trying to come up with answers, but even then, the crazy thing about this is that it's gotten so large to this point that like no single person is going to have all the answers. I'm trying to break down and analyze with you guys all the effects that we could possibly think. This is where we exercise that first and second and third order thinking. But yeah, no. Do I think the Fed relies on asset prices? To a degree, but I would argue it's actually more of the inverse, which is that asset prices are staying high partly due to the effects of the Federal Reserve. All right, I'm going to bring it back for an argument against the author real quick. I'm going to hit him with the old classic, the Austrian School of Economics. So, Will, if the Federal Reserve dictates interest rates, and you think of money as a commodity, as in like what is the cost of borrowing money in the future, well, that kind of sounds like a marketplace. But if the Federal Reserve is the person that sets the base interest rate, would you say that's an open and free marketplace?
No.
And to point it back to our good old School of Austrian Economics, well, they argue that free marketplaces are always going to find the most economic and most efficient solution. Therefore, if you have distortions in it from the Federal Reserve, it means that you're muddying up and making your economy less efficient. Or in this case, it is the marketplace of the borrowing of money, because it's kind of important, because that's how we do things like open businesses, buy houses. Some people buy cars with it. Please don't get a 15-year car loan. This is not financial advice, but like, if they hand you that sheet of paper that says 15 years, please do some soul searching.
Do it, pussy. Don't be scared. Sign it without recourse, without prejudice, and then you write your name, and then you write that you are an agent on behalf of your ens legis, which is your social security number thingamajigger, and then you say pay to the order of right beneath that, and then you write your name in there too, something along those lines. And then you can do it and not worry about it.
There you go. I'll hit a few more of my arguments against here. Inflation. We've talked about it, but when you have the Federal Reserve and this system of fractional reserve banking, inflation will be part of the system. And when that happens, it means that your purchasing power goes down. So because these people with the bank and the government running their bank to back the other banks, it means that you lose because you can save money. You can't do what they do, though. If you tried it, you would be arrested. So, yeah, it creates this ultimate demand pressure, which is that you have to keep growing to outgrow inflation. That is the answer that was proposed. But at the same time, though, in the year of our Lord 2025, we know that the business cycle exists. There are good years, there are bad years. There are good times, there are bad times. We call those recessions. So if you're just operating under the assumption that you're always going to be outgrowing inflation, it's a tough ask. And I would put that right in that nearly impossible category. I'm not saying it is impossible, but it's nearly impossible, especially when you have a marketplace of individual actors all making decisions in their own self-interest. You're going to get times where times are bad, and that's where you see good old 2022 and 2021, where we had a pretty much a full year of double-digit inflation going on. And I would argue that's not great. Ugh.
Yeah.
Hexagon Lost in Asia coming back at us. He says, does quantitative easing create moral hazard for both banks and the government?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to, can you elaborate on this one a little bit? Does quantitative easing create moral hazard for both banks and government?
I'm going to say yes, because since it is moral, it is subject to interpretation, and I'm going to interpret that anything that the Fed or the government does is morally hazardous.
I guess the pushback on that thought would be that theoretically, if you're operating a just government, then you are operating within moral bounds. But quantitative easing, what it does is it injects money into the marketplace, therefore driving down the cost of money lower, but it also drives up the cost. I think that the moral question in this one is that theoretically, if you go back to the idea of inflation and reducing purchasing power, if you push quantitative easing to the point that it has that effect, you are not actually stealing from people, but you're in a way stealing the value of the things that they have. You're devaluing the things that people have been trading their lives for. Here we go. If the banks know the Fed will buy their bad assets, why act responsibly? Does quantitative easing encourage government overspending since the Fed absorbs the debt? Yes, it does. This gets back to my point about you're creating negative incentives. You're incentivizing bad behavior. You are incentivizing you're incentivizing people to do things that are against the interests of other people because you know you have the power to be bailed out at their expense. It is pretty much the definition of like using people. But I think the issue with this one and why people don't ask the moral question as much is because it's so obfuscated and it's so indirect, which is that it's not Jerome Powell kicking down the door, taking money out of my wallet. It is Jerome Powell setting an interest rate and doing quantitative easing. So that way banks can do what they do, get first advantage of the dollar, buy up all the assets that I was hoping to buy, that I was saving my dollars for, and now my dollars are worth less because the thing that I was trying to buy with the thing that I have is now not worth as much of the thing that I wanted. This is where we get into the world of the abstract, where because it's not so indirect, you can put a bunch of spin on it. This is the part of the stream where Will holds up the campfire image and he says it's all campfire stories. If I can convince you that me inflating the money supply is not stealing your purchasing power and it's someone else's fault, well, it's not on me. I'm not acting immorally. But yeah, you're entirely right there. But I think your question is, especially if you're saying that if the Fed will buy their bad assets, it's also a question of governance, not just the actual mechanism itself. Theoretically, the mechanism can be used for good, but it can also be used for bad. And I think that, yeah, you nailed it perfectly, which is we've gotten to the point where it can be you're incentivizing bad behavior. So yeah, moral hazard for sure. It's just being reckless and not kind of caring about the expense of others. I'm not saying you have to care about the expense of others, but at the same time, if you really want to try to appeal to the idea of justice and fairness, which is that, like, don't steal, how far does that apply? Don't steal their money. Don't steal the thing that they want with their money. Don't steal the value of their money.
I'll go so far as to say there is no justice, there is no fairness, there is only might. So get might, because the government's got it. So you should get some too.
I would actually
Otherwise you're going to get trampled on.
I would push back on you with that one and saying that justice requires might.
Sure.
The idea of
But,
justice
like-
is something that you can argue that comes from natural law, but the idea to enforce justice does require might to an extent. And ultimately, if you go into the social contract society, it does require that monopoly on might as well.
Mhm.
True.
Yeah, there is
All
no
right.
justice without might. But like the might is the thing that makes everything else. So like without it, you've got a whole lot of nothing, and you have to rely on other people to feed you table scraps for you to get your justice. Unless you can like extract justice yourself, you have to rely on someone who's bigger and powerful to give the justice to you. That's my
That's
thesis thing.
That's true. I mean, I don't know if we want to go down the whole anarchy debate just right now, but
Yeah.
When you-
If you
Yeah, I
guys
get
want
what
to see
you're saying.
more of
I
that,
hear you.
check out
I
the
hear
Degen
you.
Roundtable politics topic where me and Moondog kind of hashed it out.
There you go. I'll jump in there as well. Tell you what, Hexkin, hit us, man. We're ready for the lightning round. We're at the last half hour ish of the stream. So, folks, if you got any questions out there for us, please hit us now. We'll try to answer as many as we can. Oh, but gosh, tell you what though, I do want to finish answering a question that Arceus had from earlier. So, hear me out. There is a case that you don't have to get rid of the Federal Reserve, but you can make it obsolete. The way that you do that is through competition. Granted, the government kind of does have monopoly on the ability to issue currency that's used to pay taxes, but at the same time, though, stuff like cryptocurrency theoretically could become large enough and widely used enough to the point where it actually rivals it. There's pretty much nothing stopping you from a private citizen standpoint of transacting in like British pounds inside of the United States if you found other people that are willing to transact in British pounds. That's also what I believe is a fiat currency, so they have their own issues. But at the same time, though, it applies the analogy applies one-to-one with crypto. And that's one of the reasons why I think people push adoption as much as they do. Not just from the idea of like the investor standpoint of I'm trying to get into a market early so that when it does become popular, I have a large advantage from it. Like if you look at the even when we were talking about hijacking Bitcoin by Roger Ver, like the original ethos of Bitcoin was supposed to be peer-to-peer transactions. If you can get that to scale up high enough, you can get to the point where you rely on this sort of currency to do your transactions. And at that point, the US dollar is obsolete to you, which means why do you need it? Why do you care? The Federal Reserve becomes irrelevant. Is that a big ask? Yes, that is effectively asking a single cryptocurrency to become the new world reserve currency effectively, or at least your localized reserve currency. But it is a big ask. And then even if you wanted to get outside of the system, you would have to find some other way to interact with it. But as far as the idea of solving or figuring out how to fix the Federal Reserve or get rid of the Federal Reserve, theoretically, you can outcompete it. Granted, you're trying to outcompete the US dollar, but it is possible. Do you think that's a pipe dream, Will?
I don't think it's a pipe dream. Part of me is like, man, did the CIA invent crypto? I don't fucking know. Is it all a big fucking scam anyways? I don't know. But I know that I like it better than the dollar. So for now, it's pretty cool.
That's true.
Can it realistically compete with the Fed? I would say probably not, just because of Gresham's law, where the shittier money is used more. Like the shittier money grows faster. So like, what's going to grow faster, the Fed or Bitcoin? You know, like the Fed can just print more money. You can't print more Bitcoin. You can get more people to buy it. It can increase in wealth, but like the shittier money, the shittier money wins in the competition. When both are accepted, the shittier one, like we don't use Bitcoin to transact. We use dollars because it's shittier. We don't use fucking chicken eggs to transact because we use money because money's shittier. Like we use money to buy the chicken eggs. We don't use chicken eggs to get money, right? For the most part. Like
That's an interesting
everyone,
argument. I like it.
everyone is dumping their dollars for something else, right? The only reason to have dollars is to get rid of them. It's like the most garbagey thing from the consumer standpoint, anyways.
The only other case I would argue for that one is that the only other point of having dollars is to get more dollars through things like treasury bills and investments and that kind of stuff, where you can literally use money to kind of like print money effectively.
Yeah, but like even then, it's like you're just creating more like garbage stuff, which you get rid of to get better things. Like you get rid of the garbage stuff to get the better things. And so like the garbage stuff works as the best money.
Fair enough. Tell you what,
The worst money is the best money.
Mr. Asia himself, are markets addicted to quantitative easing like a drug? Will, what do you think?
Sure, why not? I mean, the market's not really a corporeal entity in the same sense as a human. So like it's a collective. It's like saying, is the anthill addicted to sugar? It's like, no, the ants are addicted to the sugar. The ants are inside of the anthill. So like you could confound the analogy, I suppose, but I would say that the market responds really well to quantitative easing. So for the sake of like making the analogy, I'll just say yeah, you can.
I think that quantitative easing is one of the drugs that markets are addicted to, especially in the issues that we're seeing today. Other things that they're addicted to, or rather, one of the big pressures that I think markets are subject to is that, especially in the modern era, there's so much competition and there's so much desire to be a publicly traded company. So that way you can get investor dollars to do more business. But now you answer to the investors, and the investors more and more are demanding quarterly earnings to show that you're profitable and that they've made good investments, which incentivizes you to try to build the business faster, meaning quantitative easing is going to be one of your best friends there. But gosh, speculation, technology, manipulation, regulations, those are all things that the markets, I think, as we move further into the modern age, have gotten more addicted to, as you will say. I think that some of these were actually made in the book that we read a few weeks ago. The free market one, not in favor of public debt, but it was like Justice or something. The Price of Inequality. I think the Price of Inequality made a pretty good argument for this, which is that the markets are not as pure as the driven snow as you think that they are. The markets have been manipulated and you can actively see it. Quantitative easing, I would argue, is one of those things. Tell you what, Will, another question for you. Should money be unlimited or fixed supply? Or should the money supply be fixed or unlimited? Should there actually be an infinite amount of dollars at the Federal Reserve?
It should be one of those two things. I would say the answer to your question is yes. It should be one of those two things.
Okay, but why?
I'm taking the sarcastic answer. Should money be unlimited or fixed supply? The money should be whatever it is. Right? Like
what?
I'm not gonna pretend like I know what the answer is to this question, right? Do we want Bitcoin where there's a fixed supply, or do we want Hex where there's an infinite supply? Right? Like is the rate of growth important?
Will, you're cutting out on me, but I'll get you back in here in a sec. Please, sir, come back.
I am.
Sorry, I just lost the last 20, 30
noises.
seconds.
Okay. I don't know if I'm.
I'll tell you what. How about we do this? Let's walk through the pros and cons of each of these. And there's actually a third one, which is like fixed growth supply. So fixed supply, we might call that being backed by gold, if you will. What were the pros and cons of being backed by gold?
Am I live now?
Yeah, you're live.
Okay. The pros and cons of gold are it's real fucking heavy. It's non-fungible. It's not liquid. It's very heavy. Requires a lot of protection if you got a lot of it. I'll say as far as the supply goes, I think that I want to go back to what I was saying before it cut out about the original question, which is that like I don't think that it should be either strictly limited or strictly unlimited. I think that it should be what is required. which is like I'm not going to pretend to know what's required. But I will say that I know that what we have right now is not working. And I will say that, like, when the money is a fixed supply, it probably doesn't work because you lose to the competition because of Gresham's law. And when the money is infinite supply, then you lose to inflation and other such things. So I'll just say that, like, there shouldn't be a monopolistic control on, like, money supply, just like there shouldn't be a monopolistic control on, you know, people's bodily autonomy. There shouldn't be monopolistic control on your speech. There shouldn't be you should have the right to transact however the fuck you want. And you can use dollars, you can use euros, you can use Bitcoin, you can use chicken eggs, you can use favors that you owe to each other, right? Like, shout out to David Graeber and his book Debt. Like, use whatever you have to. I don't think that there should be a black and white answer. I just think that there should not be an entity that says, hey, we're choosing black or we're choosing white, so fuck you, live inside of our rule. I think that, like, let the free market decide, let people choose what they want, and may the best man win, sort of deal. That's what I think. What do you think, Zeke?
Will, you're an Austrian at heart, because you just gave the Austrian School of Economics answer right there. Let the market decide. I like it. But Arceus actually has a really good follow-up here for you. Can you have a fixed supply of money if you don't have a fixed number of people?
Well, there you go.
That is one of the fundamental points there, Arceus, for sure, which is that if we lived in a static state, meaning that nothing ever changed, there is a precise amount of dollars, which is the exact right amount to have in the economy at any given time. But as you stated there, things are constantly changing. No, we don't have a fixed number of people. We don't even have a static economy. If anything, it's very unstatic or fluid, if you will. So here, I'll do my best here. The issue with the unlimited money supply, I think, is kind of what we're seeing now, which is that it operates on the whims of people to do what they think is best in the moment. And we get towards the issues that we've talked about in many of the other books, which is that you try to have a centralized command style economy. You're not going to be able to do it. The markets are simply too big. And additionally, this is where we get other issues like inflation, robbing people of their purchasing power, that kind of stuff, hyperinflation. It's not good. Fixed supply. This is actually what we saw in the beginning of the book when we were talking about the 1870s. We were closer to a fixed supply because everything was backed. As a result of that, we saw that there just simply wasn't enough money to go around. If you have a fixed supply, your money is going to be relatively stable. I'm not going to say it's safe if you have it in a bank and stuff, because we saw the bank runs. Those things happen. The downside to the fixed supply is that you're capping your growth potential. You're capping the amount of transactions that you can do without trying to get everyone at the same single spot so everyone can hand the same dollar to each other instantaneously to solve all the balances and make the numbers work. I like the Hex example you gave me, which is that it's technically unlimited, but really I think it's closer to a fixed growth supply, which is that there is a cold hard calculus behind how much there will be at any given point. When you get to this, are you going to get some inflation? Yes. Theoretically, though, if it is pre-established and you can do the math on it, it means that you can plan out how much there's going to be. Theoretically, everyone could plan around this and make it work, but we live in the real world, and that's not how it works. We can't have everyone instantaneously at the speed of light giving the same dollar to everybody. So I think that right now, the way that the money supply is, it's that fixed growth supply that leans towards unlimited as opposed to fixed supply. And that's where we see a lot of the issues that we see. And you see kind of that like cascading of costs or cascading of inflation, which is like, you have a good economy. Cool. Your wages are going up. Everyone's wages are going up. Cool. You have more purchasing power. More purchasing power means more dollars competing for the same stuff. More dollars competing for the same stuff means more inflation. Oh, I have inflation and I need to make more money. Okay. Well, now I need another raise. Now I have a raise so I can buy more stuff. More money means more inflation. Inflation means I need more money. And it's because there's a lagging factor between all those things, that's where we see the effects going on. And depending on how much that factor lags, that's really where you see times get bad or times can get really good, like we saw post-World War II, which is that the the wages increased rapidly. Granted, the economy was also expanding rapidly, but then eventually the inflation did catch up with it. Granted, it was compounded by going off the gold standard and fractional reserve banking, as always, but it's that thing. So if you go with the fixed growth supply, you can theoretically plan for it. So if you have savings, you can try to invest in things that give you a good return. You can invest in bonds, you can invest in good stocks, good companies, maybe some crypto here and there, that kind of stuff. That should theoretically allow you to keep up with inflation pretty well. The issue is that it doesn't work for everybody. And it's the example of the K-shaped economy where some people are doing poorly and some people are doing well. It is the people that have the money to invest will be able to keep up with inflation. The people that don't have money to invest means that their money just gets transacted instantaneously on their day-to-day actions, and it's constantly churning instead of growing. So, if anything, I would argue that, well, here you go. You have competing demands. So, would you rather have the economy grow faster, or would you rather have your money last longer? Because here's your trade-off. If you lean towards fixed supply, that means you're leaning towards curbing economic growth for the sake of preserving the value of money. If you lean towards the unlimited side of things, it means that you're uncapping growth, but you are definitely also uncapping inflation to a degree. So again, it's Thomas Sowell here, baby. It's trade-offs, and it's different trade-offs for different people. I think that the growth aspect is a little overplayed at this point in the economy. I think that a lot of the issues that we're seeing are driven by this constant demand for quarterly earnings and stuff like that. And when you're constantly pursuing that kind of stuff, you start to make those long-term trades for short-term gains. There's not going to be a single magic bullet solution here, but at the same time, though, I think that leaning based on the current trajectory of history, we've leaned too far into the uncapped growth. I think it might be smart to lean towards capping the supply a little bit in order to stabilize what already exists. There will still be growth. It's just not going to be quite as fast. But again, it's not a single factor solution as well. There's so many other things that go into it, whether it's competing on the global stage with all the other countries, all the other currencies, whether it's who you are in the country based on where you are right now, whether it's geographically, financially, what point you're at in life as well, that kind of stuff. But I think that, like a lot of people are talking about, like, I think people can feel that a correction is coming. And if anything, I feel like a correction is more towards what I would argue is like the natural order of how things are supposed to work. Because theoretically, you can keep running the train as fast as you can, but eventually you're going to hit the cliff. Or this could be the argument to make where it's time to slow down in order to make a turn so that we can speed up again in the future. Gosh, that was a lot of wishy-washy nonsense, wasn't it?
I don't know if there was a question attached to that. It sounded like it in the beginning, but I
was answering the question and I soapboxed myself out.
I gotcha. No, you're good, man.
Yeah. Well, tell you what, we're getting towards the end of the show. Overall, like, do we drastically change the Fed? Do we try to slightly alter it? Do we keep doing what we do? What do you feel?
I will say it does not matter what I feel because I am in no position to make any sort of change.
Neither am I.
That's what I would say. I would say the Serenity Prayer and be like, God, grant me the courage to change the things I can, the peace to accept the things that I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference, or whatever the hell. And I would be like, oh, the Federal Reserve, can I change it? No. Okay, doesn't matter. Next thing. Sort of idea there. But like, if I had my druthers, yeah,
that's possibly
if I had my druthers, I got no clue.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, at the end of the day, like, realistically, theoretically, the most that you or I could do is we can get on Degen Roundtable and we can try to rally the troops and tell them to go write their congressman and say the Federal Reserve sucks, do something about it, or I'm not voting for you. And there you go. You are wielding the political power you have. This political power.
You are now my personal army. So go do my bidding, please.
There you go. Will's Mercenaries.
Yeah, there we go. We got Zenith Zulu Warriors or something. I don't know.
Zenith Zulus. That sounds kind of hard.
Jelly's Jaguars. The
There you
nose
go.
have it.
Thanks. The nose have it. 54 yes, 1 no. The nose have it. All right, I'll answer my own question. I think that the economy is massive. A lot of people rely on it. Making drastic changes, I don't think is the way to go. But I do think that you need to start course correcting. The Fed is one place you can start course correcting. I think that releasing the interest rates a little bit towards more of an open market idea would be a good start. But realistically, I think that in order to enable changes to the Federal Reserve, you have to start with the spending at the federal level, because this is the largest debt the face of the planet has ever seen. This is the highest spending entity the face of the planet has ever seen. And right now, it is the thing that is driving a lot of the issues that we see going on. So the answer is you got to start cutting funding. People are going to hate it. Everyone has their favorite program, but at some point, you got to go through sequestration. You got to start cutting the paper towels at the barracks. So
you should just say, hey, the things that you get, you pay for. Imagine fucking that. Imagine
what a concept. What a concept. Oh my gosh.
Pay back all the Social Security that people have put into it and fucking clip it. Be like, all right, all done. Sorry, guys. Sorry we did that Ponzi scheme. Right?
There you go. I dig it. Alrighty, tell you what. One final time, Will. Do you have the phone case, sir?
I do have the phone case on my hip because I went into Love's and got some coffee earlier. But it's time for chat motherfucking shout outs. I think you guys can see it. I can't.
Yeah, we got two final ones sneaking in here before we get out of here. Moonpill the Rational Optics. He says, running late, got stuck at work. Either way, good to see you, my man. Hope you caught at least the good part. We spent the first hour really talking about the book, going through everything it was talking about, the history of why they created the Federal Reserve between 1870 and 1913 when they created it. Good story, good perspective. Try to understand why people made the decisions that they made at the time. But outside of that, yeah, second half of the hour was us yelling at the author and us yelling at the Federal Reserve and Jerome Powell. But we also did give him some compliments there. Said he had a nice, smooth, buttery voice there, Will.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, final one of the evening. Mr. Hexkin Lost in Asia says, you guys are rock stars. No, sir. You're a rock star. Thank you so much. We appreciate all the input. It was a great conversation. Love hanging out and talking with you guys. And by the way, Arceus, really appreciate you as well, man. You guys definitely helped carry some good conversation there. Really enjoyed this one. I know this does conclude the Devil's Advocate arc from Zenith on Book Club. Or at least we're going to put it on hiatus for a while. We're going to get back to some more of the good essentials, maybe even some fun stuff. I had a blast covering Starship Troopers. And you kind of inspired me to maybe go pick up a classic or something that I haven't read yet and talk about it with you, because that could be a good time. Yeah. Alrighty, Mr. Will Stevenson, it's time that we do that thing. So I need you to give me your rating on the 0 to 10,000 hours of mastery scale. Where would you put this book? And then also, what do you got going on and where can the folks find you?
I would not put this book on the scale. I don't think it's necessary. If you must read it, then fucking go for it. I don't think it's required. I think it's like, okay, sort of kind of history. But I would, if you're going to read The Creature from Jekyll Island and you're like, you know what? Oh, excuse me. I want to know what's on the other flip side of this coin. Then like, go for it. Give it a read. But I wouldn't say that it's absolutely necessary.
That's fair.
And feel free to disagree with me on that. But like, it was an okay read. I will not be reading it again. Unless Zenith requires me to. So in the spirit of doing book club stuff, that's like the only time I would consume this book. But as far as where can the folks find me and what have I got going on in the near future, you guys can find me in Dallas for the next day and a half probably before I have to boogie my way back on up to Kansas. So I'll be right up above the Oklahoma Panhandle for a while, over near Amarillo and Panhandle, Oklahoma, and Kansas and all that stuff. Knocking down some towers, having a great time. It'll be awesome. that's what I've got going on. And you guys can find me, if you're not looking to find me in real life, then you go to will.pls.fyi. All my socials are tagged over there, and you can stalk me over there. Unless you're my very specific stalker, in which case, stop it. Fucking sick of it. For everyone else, though, I fucking love you guys. You're awesome, and you're crazy cool. And yeah, that's what I've got going on. And for next week's book club, I want to do Brandon Joe Williams' book. And I can't remember the name of it, but it's something like The Most Beautiful Woman in the World, the United States of America, something like that. And it's an old citizen guide on like how to be a good citizen from, I think it's like the 1920s or something like that. And so it talks a lot about like civic duty and stuff. And I haven't like read it completely through yet, but I bought it. It is one of the few books that I have a physical hard copy of. As a matter of fact, I do believe it is right here behind my head somewheres. Oh, it is. Well, check that out. Oh, and aha, Zenith has found it. Yes. One of the few books that I carry a physical copy of, The Guide to the Most Beautiful Woman in the World, the United States of America, a 2025 modernization of Army Training Manual 2000-25, which was published in 1928 by Brandon Joe Williams. Shout out to all the Pickletarians out there. You guys are fucking awesome. Go find yourself a nice, big, large cucumber and fuck it up, jam it up your ass and go fuck yourselves, is what he likes to say to his audience. So there you guys go. We're a bunch of degenerates over here, but he's a very smart guy with a lot of clever content, and I'm very, very fascinated with all of the stuff that he talks about. So this is the book that we will be covering for next week's book club, and that's what I've got. Zenith, where can the folks find you? Where would you put this book on a scale of 0 to 10,000 hours of mastery? And what have you got going on in the near future?
Well, I have good news. I do not plan on reading this again, nor do I plan on asking anyone else to read it again. But I would put this book at somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 hours. I think that this book gives a good explanation of what the Federal Reserve is, what it does. But the reason that I would put it at this place and the value in the book, I think that it is worthwhile to go back and listen to the reasoning of people that have made decisions that are affecting you. It is understanding why the people did what they did, so that way you are hopefully not going to repeat those mistakes, and hopefully are able to maybe pick out the good ideas, pick out the bad ideas, see what they were thinking, and at the very least, maybe extend a little bit of grace to people that you've been bashing on your podcast for a while. So that's the value that I see in it, and that's why I put it at 2,000 to 3,000 hours. I think it will help you do some introspection, get you to start thinking about thinking, and thinking about your thinking and how not to do the bad thinking that you claim that the bad thinking is. A lot of thinking words there. Anyways, folks, you can find me over on X and Instagram at zenithdi. But more importantly, you can catch us again Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time, where we're doing our flagship Sunday news show. This week, we're going to be talking about, yes, Bitcoin is now down under $100,000. We're going to have to wait and see what the close looks like and see if we actually close below that 50-week moving average to determine what's going on with the markets. But additionally, there's been a lot of chatter and also an official sacrifice going on live for the ProveX token. So that has all of us Polskins and Hexkins in a bit of a tizzy or friendly debate, you might say, on X to figure out what's going on and understand why Richard Hart is making the moves that he is and why he's creating the products that he is and releasing them the way that he is, because apparently that's affecting the market. And we're going to talk all about that on Sunday. Outside of that, though, yes, we're going to be back next Friday talking about the guide to the most beautiful woman in the world. Recommendation by Will Stevenson. He will be hosting that one. That's going to be Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. And then we also have our community show on Wednesday, Whiskey Wednesday. And believe me, there's a lot to talk about the community right now with the ProveX stuff. So we're looking forward to hearing about what you guys are doing, what you got going on. But I guess as a reminder, if you're interested in the sacrifice for the ProveX token or that project overall, the way to get the absolute most points is to sacrifice early, and the deadline for that window to end is December 2nd. So we want to make sure we get all of the discourse out of the way well ahead of that time so that people are the most educated they possibly can to make whatever decisions you think are best for you. Because at the end of the day, this is investing to a degree. So please make sure you're making decisions your own personal interest. But again, nothing we say here is financial advice or legal advice for that matter. But that is all we got, which means it's time to do the thing. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for spending your valuable time here with us on the DGen Roundtable. As our very own Agent J often says, we know that time is your most valuable asset, and we appreciate you investing it right here with us every time. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Zenith, but more importantly, you have been watching the DGen Roundtable. Mr. Producer, that's me. Go ahead and get that trigger finger ready because it's time to remind all the folks at home to remember to DGen responsibly.